Alright, let's go ahead and talk about organic chemistry. Now, when we have organic chemistry, there are a few things that we'll need to know. One is that there are types of compounds. Now, what these types of compounds do is that they have special properties. Now, when we think of their properties, what we really want to hone in on is their structure. But before we go ahead and talk about the properties, we're just going to talk about the main types of organic compounds. The definition of what an organic compound is very sort of not clear. Some people say it's compounds which have carbon, some people say it's compounds which are in living things, which I mean is sort of true, but it's not 100% clear as to what an organic compound actually is. The definition is not, perfect, or at least taught in high school properly. Either way, so how do I pause? Okay, figured out how to pause, but just mind me, it's my first time recording this, and I have no expectations for this YouTube channel whatsoever, like at all. But I just want to go ahead and sort of vlog my revision sessions for my upcoming GCSEs. Either way, so what we have here is that organic compounds are usually monomers or a type of polymer. I want to sort of get through this as quick as possible, but let's talk about the structure, since this is really what we're going to have to understand. Now, the properties are chemical and physical, right? But the structure is what affects most of these properties. We can represent the structure in a few different ways. Now, the structure can be represented as a okay, here. Oops. Okay, no, that's still very large. The structure can be represented as a sort of formulas. Structures can be represented as formulas. These formulas can include molecular. We also have formulas that are structural. And finally, we have formulas that are sort of displayed structural. Now, the differences and similarities between all of these and the importances between all of these is that the structural and molecular formulas are going to show us the bonds and at least the important ones, and the atoms more clearly than the molecular formula, which we're going to get into. Now, this is the molecular formula, whatever, right? There's also a naming system. Now, this naming system is particularly important because through this naming system, unlike, your last naming system, which was like, this is ammonia, whereas, like, in previous sort of, nomenclatures, you had NH3 equals ammonia, which didn't really make any sense, but in organic chemistry, it's very, very particular, and it's actually a very important skill to understand the names. So, the name nomenclature includes a few important things, and we also have one extra formula here. General, which is a type of the molecular formula. So again, we have formulas which display the bonds, which are important for displaying the bonds, and we have formulas which are important for showing us the atom count. And these are smaller, more condensed. Now, the importance with the sort of. Okay, so now that we've figured out the sort of. Hopefully, my mic is better now. Now that we figured out that there are formulas for bonds and there are also formulas for your atom count, we can also go ahead and talk about the actual things in the structures that affect the molecule and what the general formula actually means. Now, to understand this, we'll have to understand that some organic compounds have homologous structures. So basically, they have a family and they have a group. In this group can be within a sort of family. Now, the family is differentiated by their number of carbons. You have carbon, 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 and you might even have. Okay, this is going to take a long time to draw, but you get the point. You might have a carbon chain with 4 carbons. The similarities and differences between a family and a group are that the homologous family is part of a homologous series. A homologous series is a family of compounds that have similar chemical and physical properties, and they differ from each other by a CH2 unit. This is important. CH2 is basically this. Homologous series only exist in carbon atoms. Now, what's important here is to note that a functional group is sort of mm, a functional group is the main sort of thing that gives the chemical properties of a compound. A functional groups, there can be a few of them. Now, for example, having two bonds between carbon atoms is considered to be a functional group on its own. Having one bond is also a functional group. This is basically an alkene. This. An alkene is a organic compound with two carbon atoms in one of its functional groups. And within a family, now alkanes are. Alright, so alkenes can be considered both a homogeneous family and a homogeneous series, which affects the composition, and a functional group which affects the chemical properties, and the part of them is that homunculus series can be sort of thought as the main backbone of different primates, like a monkey, a human, and a gorilla. Now, the functional group we have. Now, for a functional group, we have to consider a few things. We need to know if it's a basic type of bonds dependent functional group, or if it's a functional group which is made up of molecules. Now, usually functional groups are made up of more molecules, and they are attached to a family of alkyls. What is an alkyl? Well, an alkyl is an alkyl is basically a alkane minus 1. It's usually represented by R. And this is something important, right? We can go back to the nomenclature, and what you'll see is that all of these sort of molecules have a sort of representation, as we'll see later on. And it's usually just their molecules. And this is prevalent in the structural formula, not really the molecular formula at all. But alkyls are a bit weird. They have these. They have the sort of symbol R. Now, for molecules, we have a few to name to start with. That's carboxylic acid, we have an alcohol, and we have the mix of these two, which is an ester. So I'm pretty sure COOH. Oops. Now we have carboxylic acids, we have alcohols, we have amines, which are just basically NH. We have alkene, and no, not alkenes. We have alkanes and alkynes here. So basically, we can see it there. We have bonds of functional groups, and we have molecules of functional groups. Now, molecules are sort of, I guess, they are what they are. Now, an alkene. Okay, so the thing with an alkane, the naming nomenclature system, is that you have a few you have a few things, right? You have to understand that there is the functional group part and the homunculus series part. The number of carbons and this is basically all of it. Simple. The carbon number is before 10, before 4, and anything after 4. And basically all you'll have before 4 is prop, bute, eth, meat. That's it. That's simply it. Nothing more, nothing less. For example, if we try to write this CH3 CH2, if we go ahead and try to write this, we will get something that is sort of like this. How should I say it? We have four carbons, that's a bute. We have the hydrogens don't matter. We have an alkane, and that's an ene. Simple. It's butene. It's butene. Now let's go ahead and talk about the monomers. We have a few sort of things when it's time to talk about the monomers. First of all, we have to consider the types of monomers we're going to talk about. These might be. Oh, we have fuels actually. Alright, we have fuels, and we get these fuels through something called fractional distillation. I'm going to stop writing because I'm sucking at this chapter so far. But we have fuels. Yeah. Alright, so these fuels can be obtained through fractional distillation. The fractional distillation process, how it happens is that you have a sort of fraction of oil which gets sent down through your sort of drain. Now, what this drain really sort of does is, it doesn't get sent down through the drain. Crude oil is put through a furnace. Not a furnace. Crude oil is heated, and then this heated crude oil goes ahead and evaporates or boils up into a cooler column of a bigger fractional distillation chain, which what happens is that fuck jeez oh my god um, so what happens is that the Alright, this was sort of failed attempt.